This now is Democratic New York Congressman George Latimer, also a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Welcome back, sir. Nice to see you.
Nice to be with you.
Let's start with your reaction to President Trump's comments about ground troops. And since Congress recently chose not to limit the president's war powers in this conflict, as you heard from Mr. Fine, if this were to escalate to U.S. troops on the ground, what role should Congress play?
Well, we should not give the president a blank check. I heard my colleague from Florida, Republican, talk about, I support President Trump, whatever he wants to do. That can't be the way this government is structured, not since its inception. There's a check and a balance between the presidency and the legislative body. Now, this House of Representatives and this United States Senate right now with Republican leadership has chosen never to check the president on any issue, on tariffs, on the DOGE cuts. And so it's no surprise to me that there's this sort of automatic support for whatever the president says is necessary. And you see his political influence on Republicans in Texas and other places. What you need is a sober discussion that involves all of the key elected officials, not just one man's opinion. So about ground troops, it's going to take a lot of convincing for Americans to believe that we should put boys, women, and men into the ground. We've seen what's happened in Iraq. We saw what happened in Afghanistan. We heard promises then that everything would be fine. It did not turn out fine. And now we're talking about, oh, we've obliterated their power, and yet we haven't obliterated their power. Now we may need men on the ground. So I think what we're missing here is a scrutiny from the Congress, the leaders of the Congress, as to exactly what are the plans going forward. That Iran is an evil empire is not in debate. The vast majority of us know what Iran has been. I was around back during the 1979 hostage taking. But that's not the point. The point is, where do we go from here? And do we want to find ourselves in another 20-year war with the as in Afghanistan, and at the end of 20 years, nothing fundamentally changed? As
a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, what kind of briefings, intelligence, strategic plans should Congress be demanding from the current administration?
Well, I think there at the outset needs to be the kind of meetings that are happening in private conversation, and I would assume the leaders of the Foreign Affairs Committee in both sides of the aisle and in both houses would have access to highly classified information. We had a general briefing last week. It only gave us the outlines. Quite frankly, I get more watching your news reports than I do from the administration directly. When you talked about at the top of the hour and you saw the clips of the president saying it's been obliterated, maybe we'll send in troops, maybe we won't, that's roughly the level of information we're getting, couched in legalese language, but it's as if the president is going to decide, as he said, on his gut feeling, and you cannot be at war across this globe with one person's gut feeling. It's irrational.
We are seeing gas prices climb across the country as oil markets react to the conflict in the Middle East. National averages up already, energy costs pressuring households. How much is this escalation costing American families, and what is Congress going to do about it? Especially, as you just mentioned, a lot of the briefings and a lot of the information is simply trickling down to the Foreign Affairs Committee.
Well, this war is going to cost American families greatly. And the bottom line is, when we go to war, if the president lays out a case that gets America behind him, and I might add other countries in the world. Best example is George H.W. Bush going in to get Iraq out of Kuwait back in 1991. That was well planned, well executed. There was a unified sense in America that we were doing the right thing. That is not where we are in this war. There are reasons to take out Iran, but now when you see the gas prices spike, and that's not the only thing that's going to spike, you're impacting the shipping routes around Saudi Arabia and the peninsula when you affect war in that area of the world. And a lot of things are going to see price hikes. Then in addition to that, in addition to those men and women who are going to be fighting overseas, we have to be concerned about Iran's ability, even if they're decimated, to have domestic terrorism here in the United States or against Americans in other locations, other places around the globe. So there's a lot of ramifications to the average American. That's why you don't get into war casually. And if you're in a war, that's why you prosecute it soberly and soundly with consensus and not with the gut feeling of anybody.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.